What if the worst thing your family ever did to you turned out to be the greatest gift of your life? Elena Whitmore was 22 years old when her aunt stood in the marble dining room of their Connecticut estate and announced that Elena would marry David Torres, the night janitor, in 3 weeks. The room erupted in laughter so loud that Elena felt it vibrate through her chest. Her cousin Christopher actually fell off his chair. Her cousin Vanessa had tears streaming down her face from laughing so hard. Uncle Richard spilled his $1,500 bottle of wine across the Persian rug. This was supposed to be Elena's punishment, her public humiliation, the final nail in the coffin of a girl who had been unwanted her entire life. What the Whitmore family didn't know, what they couldn't have possibly imagined, was that David Torres wasn't cleaning floors because he had to. He was hiding in plain sight, and he was worth $22 billion. This is the story of how the cruelest punishment became the most unexpected salvation, and how a family's darkest intentions paved the way for the most authentic love story you'll ever hear. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Elena Whitmore wasn't born into misery. She was born into love. Her father, James Whitmore, was the youngest son of the powerful Whitmore family, a dynasty built on New England real estate and old money that stretched back 5 generations. But James did something his family considered unforgivable. He walked away from it all. He turned down his position in the family company, rejected his trust fund, and instead went to medical school to become a humanitarian doctor. He married Sofia Reyes, a beautiful woman from a small village outside Madrid, who worked as a translator for the United Nations. The Whitmore family never attended the wedding. They considered it beneath them. James and Sophia didn't care. They built a life filled with books and laughter and weekend trips to the ocean. They lived in a modest apartment in Boston, where James worked at a community health clinic, and Sophia taught Spanish at the local community college. Elena was their entire world. Every night James would read her poetry, Neruda, Lorca, Whitman. Every morning, Sophia would sing to her in Spanish while braiding her dark hair. Elena's earliest memories were of safety, of being deeply and completely loved. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in October, when Elena was 7 years old, her parents drove to New York for a medical conference. They never made it. A semi-truck lost control on the highway. Both of them died on impact. Elena was at school when the principal came to get her. She remembers the look on Mrs. Patterson's face, that careful blankness adults wear when they're about to destroy a child's world. She remembers the social worker's gentle voice explaining that her parents were gone. She remembers not understanding what gone meant. Not really. Not until she stood at the funeral and saw 2 closed caskets and realized she would never hear her father's voice reading poetry again. She would never feel her mother's hands in her hair again. She would never be that loved again. The Whitmores took her in, not out of compassion, out of obligation and appearances. At the reading of James's will, there was barely anything. He and Sophia had lived simply, saved modestly, and left everything they had in a small trust for Elena's education. It amounted to about $50,000. Grandmother Whitmore, the matriarch of the family, made the decision from her wheelchair in the family's Connecticut estate. She was 83 years old then, sharp as a blade and twice as cutting. She looked at 7-year-old Elena with cold gray eyes and said something Elena would never forget. "My son chose poverty over power. He chose a foreign woman over his heritage. This child is the consequence of those choices. We will raise her because she is blood, but she will understand that charity has conditions." Elena moved into the Whitmore estate the following week. It was a sprawling mansion in Hartford County. $37 million worth of marble floors and crystal chandeliers and rooms that felt more like museums than homes. The other children, her cousins, lived in spacious bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms and walk-in closets. Vanessa, who was 9. Christopher, who was 11. Madison, who was 6. They had everything: personal tutors, riding lessons, summer homes in the Hamptons. Elena was given the converted attic. It was technically a bedroom. It had a bed, a small desk, a narrow closet. But it was cramped and hot in the summer and freezing in the winter. The single window looked out over the service entrance where staff came and went. It was a room that made a statement. "You are here, but you are not one of us." Aunt Margaret, James's older sister, who had assumed control of the family fortune after their father's death, laid out the rules on Elena's first night. You will attend public school. You will maintain a grade point average of 3.5 or higher. You will contribute to this household through chores and eventually part-time work. You will not ask for luxuries. You will be grateful for what you receive. Elena was 7 years old. She nodded because she didn't know what else to do. The years that followed were a masterclass in emotional neglect disguised as family obligation. The Whitmores never hit her. They never screamed at her. They did something far more insidious. They made her invisible. At family dinners, Elena sat at the far end of the 20-foot dining table. Conversations happened around her, never with her. Her cousins talked about their private school drama, their ski trips to Aspen, their plans for summer in the south of France. Elena ate quietly and cleared the plates afterward. At holidays, Elena watched her cousins open gifts from Tiffany and Gucci and Apple. She received gift cards to Target. $50, sometimes $100 if Grandmother Whitmore was feeling particularly generous. The message was clear. You are not worth the effort of a thoughtful gift. On Elena's 10th birthday, Aunt Margaret forgot entirely. There was no cake, no acknowledgement. When Elena mentioned it quietly at dinner, Margaret looked annoyed. Birthdays are for children who contribute meaningfully to this family. You're old enough to understand that life doesn't revolve around you. Elena stopped mentioning her birthday after that. By the time Elena was 13, she was working. She got a job as a cashier at the grocery store 4 blocks from the estate. She worked weekends and some evenings after school. The money went into a savings account that Aunt Margaret controlled but claimed was for Elena's future. Elena never saw the statements. She just worked. At 15, she added tutoring to her schedule. She was naturally bright, especially in literature and languages. She inherited her mother's gift for words. She tutored middle school kids in reading and writing for $20 an hour. At 17, she started cleaning houses on Saturday mornings. 3 houses, 4 hours each, $60 per house. The cruel irony wasn't lost on her. She lived in a mansion but cleaned other people's homes for money. Her cousins went to Exeter and Andover, prestigious boarding schools that cost $60,000 a year. Elena went to Hartford Public High School. She took the bus, she packed her own lunches. She joined no clubs because she couldn't afford the fees. She made no close friends because she was too exhausted and too ashamed to explain her life. But she excelled academically. She had to. It was the one area where she had control. She graduated 3rd in her class with a 4.2 grade point average. She got a full scholarship to the University of Connecticut for English literature. The Whitmores acted as though this was expected, nothing special. Of course you got a scholarship, Margaret said dismissively. You certainly couldn't afford it otherwise. Elena moved into the dorms at college. For 2 blissful years, she was away from the estate. She could breathe, she made friends, she studied obsessively. She dreamed of becoming a teacher, or maybe a writer, something that involved words and meaning and giving to others what her parents had given her, a sense of being seen. Then the money for her dorm ran out. The scholarship covered tuition, but not housing after the 2nd year. Elena called Aunt Margaret to ask if she could use some of the money from her trust, the one her parents had left. Margaret's response was cold. That money is being preserved for genuine emergencies. You can live at home and commute. You've done it before. So, at 20 years old, Elena moved back into the attic room. She commuted an hour each way to campus. She worked evenings at the grocery store and weekends cleaning houses. She slept 4 or 5 hours a night. She survived on coffee and stubborn determination. Her cousins were thriving. Vanessa had graduated from Princeton and was working at a fashion magazine in New York. Christopher was finishing up at Yale, already lined up for a position in the family real estate company. Madison was at boarding school in Switzerland. They had everything. Elena had debt from textbooks and a growing sense that she would never escape the gravitational pull of being unwanted. Then at 22, Elena graduated with honors. She had 1 semester left of student teaching to complete her education certification. She was so close to freedom. That's when she started working night shifts at the Whitmore Commercial Building. The Whitmore Commercial Building was the crown jewel of the family's real estate portfolio. 22 floors of prime office space in downtown Hartford, leased to law firms and financial companies and medical practices. It generated $4 million a year in revenue. Aunt Margaret managed it personally. She offered Elena a job, evening administrative work, filing, organizing leases, scheduling maintenance. It paid $18 an hour, which was more than the grocery store. Elena took it. She worked from 7 in the evening until midnight, Monday through Friday. The building was mostly empty by the time she arrived. The fluorescent lights hummed. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floors. It was lonely, but peaceful. She could work without anyone criticizing her or making her feel small. That's where she met David Torres. It was a Tuesday night in late March. Elena was in one of the 14th floor offices, filing paperwork that a tenant had left for the property management company. It was 11:15. She was exhausted. Her eyes hurt from staring at documents. She heard the sound of a floor buffer in the hallway, that low mechanical hum. Then the door opened and a man backed in, pulling the buffer with him. He didn't notice her at first. He was wearing dark gray work pants, a matching shirt with a name tag that said David, and work boots that had seen better days. He had dark hair, brown eyes, and a face that was handsome in an understated way. Not magazine model handsome, but real, kind. He turned and saw her. "Oh, sorry, didn't realize anyone was still here." "It's okay," Elena said. "I'm just finishing up." "You work for the Whitmores?" David asked, turning off the buffer. Elena hesitated. "In a way, I do admin work." She didn't elaborate. Didn't mention she was a Whitmore herself, though clearly not one who mattered. David nodded. "I'm David, night shift maintenance. Floors, trash, minor repairs, that kind of thing." Elena. She gave a small smile. "Nice to meet you." They didn't talk much that first night. David went back to his work. Elena finished her filing and went home. But their paths kept crossing. The building was large, but the night shift was small. Just Elena doing paperwork, David doing maintenance, and occasionally a security guard named Ron, who mostly slept at the front desk. The next week, Elena noticed a coffee cup sitting on the counter in the 14th floor break room, still hot. A sticky note next to it. "Figured you could use this, David." Elena smiled for the first time in weeks. The week after that, Elena left half of her turkey sandwich in the break room with a note, in case the janitor gets hungry. It became a routine, small gestures, coffee appearing near her desk. Half a sandwich left in the break room, a chocolate bar, a granola bar. They started coordinating their breaks, 2 in the morning. The building was silent except for the hum of the heating system and the distant sounds of the city outside. They would sit in the empty lobby under the glass atrium ceiling and talk. David told her about growing up in Arizona, about his love of astronomy. He could name every constellation visible from the northern hemisphere. He told her about working different jobs over the years, construction, landscaping, and now this. "It's quiet," he said. "I like the quiet. What about you? What brings you to this glamorous night shift?" Elena laughed, though it was a tired sound. College debt, family expectations, the usual. She didn't say more. Didn't mention that the family expecting things from her was the same family that owned the building, the same family that had made her feel worthless for 15 years. David didn't push. He just listened. Over the next 3 months, something grew between them. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand romantic gestures. It was small and real. David noticed things. He noticed when Elena looked particularly tired and would suggest she take a break, that he'd cover for her if anyone checked. He noticed when she seemed sad and would find ways to make her laugh, usually with terrible jokes about constellations. "What do you call a tick on the moon?" "A lunatic." Elena groaned but smiled. "That's awful, I know," David grinned. "But you smiled." Elena noticed things about him too. She noticed that David read during his breaks, philosophy mostly, Kant, Nietzsche, Camus. She noticed that he was kind to Ron, the security guard, always asking about his grandkids. She noticed that despite working as a janitor, David had a certain presence. He was thoughtful, articulate. There was something about him that didn't quite fit, but Elena didn't ask. She just enjoyed being around someone who made her feel like she mattered. One night in early June, they were sitting in the lobby during their 2 a.m. break. The glass ceiling showed a clear sky. David pointed out Cassiopeia, the queen who bragged about her beauty and was punished for it, he said. Greek mythology meets astronomy. Elena looked up. "Do you believe in punishment? Like cosmic punishment?" David thought about it. I think people punish themselves more than the universe does. We carry our mistakes around like weights. He looked at her. Why do you ask? Elena shrugged. Just thinking about family stuff. David's expression softened. Family can be complicated. Elena laughed bitterly. That's an understatement. They sat in silence for a moment. Then David said something that cracked Elena's chest open. You know what I've noticed about you? Elena turned to him. What? You're kind even though life hasn't been kind to you. That's rare. That's worth more than most people realize. Elena felt tears prickling her eyes. She blinked them away. How do you know life hasn't been kind to me? David gave her a look. Because I see you, Elena. I see how hard you work. I see the way you carry yourself like you're apologizing for existing. I don't know your whole story, but I know enough to see that you've been hurt. Elena's throat tightened. She didn't trust her voice. David continued. And I also see that despite all of that, you're still here, still working, still trying, still leaving half a sandwich for a janitor you barely know. That's strength. Elena wiped her eyes quickly. You barely know me. Maybe, David said. But I'd like to. Elena looked at him. Really looked at him. This man who cleaned floors and read philosophy and saw her in ways her own family never had. Yeah, she whispered. I'd like that too. They started spending more time together outside of work. Coffee on Sunday mornings at a diner near the university campus. Walks along the river on her days off. They talked about everything. David told her about losing his wife 4 years earlier. Her name was Natalia. She died of cancer at 31. It broke me, David admitted. For a long time, I didn't know how to exist in a world without her. I'm sorry, Elena said. David nodded. Me too. But I learned something from it. I learned that life is short and people are what matter. Not money, not status, people. Elena told him about her parents, about how much she missed them, about how the Whitmores had taken her in, but never truly wanted her. They treat me like a charity case, she said. Like I should be grateful they let me exist in their house. David's jaw tightened. That's not family. That's cruelty disguised as obligation. Elena shrugged. It's all I have. You have yourself, David said, and that's more than they deserve. Elena felt something shift in her chest. For the first time in 15 years, she felt seen. Not as the orphan, not as the burden, just as Elena. By late July, they were inseparable. They hadn't defined what they were. They hadn't kissed yet. But there was something undeniable between them. Elena was happier than she'd been in years. She smiled more. She laughed. She started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved good things. Then Vanessa saw them. It was a Friday night. Elena and David were sitting in the building lobby during a break, talking quietly. Vanessa had been out with friends, drunk and looking for her Uber, and stumbled into the building by mistake. She saw Elena and David through the glass doors, laughing, sitting close. The next morning, the entire Whitmore family knew. Elena was summoned to the dining room. Aunt Margaret sat at the head of the table, Uncle Richard to her right, Grandmother Whitmore in her wheelchair at the far end. Vanessa, Christopher and Madison sat along the sides, looking like they were about to watch a show. Elena stood. They never invited her to sit. Margaret's voice was ice. We've been informed that you've been fraternizing with the maintenance staff. Elena's heart pounded. I've been spending time with David, yes, Christopher snorted. The janitor. You're dating the janitor. Elena lifted her chin. His job doesn't define him. Oh, this is rich, Vanessa laughed. The orphan thinks she's in love. Madison giggled. Does he even have a car, or do you take the bus together? Uncle Richard leaned back. Elena, this is unacceptable. You represent this family, even if you're not exactly central to it. Associating with the help reflects poorly on the Whitmore name. I'm not associating, Elena said. I care about him. The room erupted in laughter. Grandmother Whitmore's raspy voice cut through. Enough! Everyone went silent. The old woman looked at Elena with those cold gray eyes. You will end this relationship immediately. No, Elena said. The word hung in the air. No one said no to the Whitmores. Margaret's face went hard. Excuse me? I care about him, Elena repeated. And who I spend time with is my choice. You live under our roof, Margaret snapped. You work in our building. Everything about you is our business. Elena's voice shook but held steady. Then maybe I should leave, Christopher laughed. And go where? You have no money. No family outside of us. No one. Elena flinched but didn't back down. I'll figure it out. Grandmother Whitmore smiled, a cold, calculating smile. Or we offer you an alternative. Elena's stomach dropped. What? You want to be with the janitor so badly? Fine. We'll arrange a marriage. Elena stared. What? You heard me, Margaret said, clearly enjoying this. You'll marry him, David Torres. We'll arrange it. A proper ceremony, legal and binding. Vanessa giggled. Oh my God, Mother, that's genius. Elena's mind raced. You can't be serious. Completely serious, Margaret said. In fact, we insist. You have two options. Marry him and remain part of this family, financially supported through the completion of your degree. Or leave right now with nothing, not a penny, no degree funding, no health insurance, no references, nothing. Christopher was practically crying with laughter. Elena Whitmore Torres, wife of a janitor. Wait until the country club hears about this. Uncle Richard added, and we'll give you a wedding gift. $10,000. Should last you about 6 months in whatever tiny apartment you'll be living in. The family erupted in laughter again. Elena stood there, shaking. This was meant to humiliate her, to trap her in poverty, to punish her for daring to be happy. But Elena realized something. If marrying David meant freedom from this family, she would do it in a heartbeat. Fine, Elena said. I'll marry him. Excellent, Margaret clapped her hands. We'll arrange everything. 3 weeks from today. Small ceremony. Immediate family only. We wouldn't want to waste money on this. The family laughed again. Elena turned and walked out. She went straight to the building that night, even though it was her day off. She found David in the basement supply room, restocking cleaning materials. David, she burst out, breathless. They know about us. And they're making us get married, as punishment. They think it's going to humiliate me and trap me in poverty with you, and I'm so sorry this is insane, but they said, if I don't do it, I have to leave with nothing, and I don't know what to do. And David caught her hands gently. Elena. Breathe. Elena stopped, tears streaming down her face. David looked at her with those kind brown eyes. I know. You know? Aunt Margaret called me this afternoon, offered me $50,000 to go through with it. Said I should enjoy the charity of marrying above my station. Elena felt sick. David, I'm so sorry. You don't have to do this. This is crazy and cruel. And do you love me? David asked simply. Elena stopped. Yes, I do. Then marry me, David said, not because they're forcing it, but because I've loved you since the night you left that sandwich with a note. Because you're the first person in years who's made me feel like myself again. But David, they're doing this to hurt me, Elena said. They want us to struggle. They want me to fail. David smiled, that gentle, knowing smile. Elena, I need to tell you something I should have told you months ago. What? I'm not actually a janitor. Elena stared at him. What are you talking about? David took a breath. My full name is David Alexander Torres, and I'm the founder and CEO of Torres Global Solutions. We build technology infrastructure for smart cities, renewable energy grids, AI-integrated transportation systems. We operate in 37 countries. The company is worth approximately $22 billion. Elena actually laughed. That's not funny, David. I'm not joking. David pulled out his phone, pulled up a Forbes article from 2 years earlier. There was his picture. David Torres, tech mogul, the invisible billionaire. Elena's legs gave out. David caught her, helped her sit on a supply crate. This is real? This is real. But you're a janitor. You clean floors. I do, David said. Let me explain. 4 years ago, my wife Natalia died from ovarian cancer. She was 31. We'd been married for 6 years. She was the love of my life. Before she died, she told me something that I couldn't stop thinking about. She said, David, you've built an empire, but you've forgotten how to see people. Promise me you'll remember what matters. After she died, I fell apart. I was running a $22 billion company, but I couldn't get out of bed. I was surrounded by hundreds of employees, but completely alone. I realized that I'd become disconnected from actual human experience. I lived in boardrooms and penthouses and private jets. I made decisions that affected millions of people, but I didn't know any of them. So I did something my board of directors thought was insane. I stepped away. I put the company in the hands of a management team I trust. I created a new identity, and I started working as a janitor in different cities across the country. Not as some undercover boss gimmick, but because I needed to remember what it felt like to be invisible, to do work that people look down on, to see the world from a different angle. I've been doing this for 18 months, David continued. I was planning to go back to my company eventually, but then I met you. Elena was crying. You've been lying to me this whole time. I have, David admitted, and I'm so sorry. But I needed to know. I needed to know if someone could love me for who I am, not for what I have. My whole adult life, I've wondered if people saw me or just saw my money. Natalia loved me before the company took off, but even she admitted before she died that she wasn't sure anymore. That broke something in me. Elena wiped her face. So, this was a test? I was a test? At first, maybe, David said honestly. But Elena, somewhere along the way, it stopped being about that. You became the most real thing in my life. You saw me, not the CEO, not the billionaire, just David, the guy who likes bad jokes and constellations. And I saw you, the woman who survived a family that tried to break her, but somehow stayed kind. Elena stood up, pacing. This is insane. You're telling me that you're worth billions of dollars and you've been mopping floors? Yes. And my family just arranged for me to marry you as a punishment. Yes. And they have no idea at all. Elena started laughing, hysterical, disbelieving laughter. This is the most absurd thing I've ever heard. I know, David said. But Elena, here's what I'm asking. Marry me. Let them think it's their punishment. Let them laugh. And then we leave. We build a life together, anywhere you want, and you never have to see them again. Elena stopped pacing. But why didn't you tell me before? All these months? Because I needed to know it was real, David said. I needed to know that you loved me when you thought I had nothing, that I was enough. And you are, Elena whispered. You've always been enough. David stepped closer. So marry me. For real this time. Not because they're forcing us, but because we choose each other. Elena looked at him. This man who was apparently a billionaire, but worked as a janitor just to find something authentic, who saw her when her own family couldn't, who loved her when she was worthless in their eyes. Okay, she said, but we don't tell them, not yet. David raised an eyebrow. You want to let them think they've won? Elena's eyes hardened. I want them to have their cruel little celebration. And then I want to watch their faces when they realize they just handed me a fortune. David grinned. You're kind of brilliant, you know that? I learned from the best janitor in Connecticut. The next 3 weeks were surreal. The Whitmores arranged the wedding with deliberate minimalism. White folding chairs rented from a party supply store. Flowers from the grocery store, no photographer. A justice of the peace instead of a minister. The ceremony would take place at the estate, in the backyard, with only immediate family present. Elena wore her mother's wedding dress. She'd kept it all these years, hidden in a box in her attic room. It was simple, cream-colored lace, elegant but modest. She'd had it altered to fit. When Aunt Margaret saw it, she wrinkled her nose. You couldn't even buy a new dress? It was my mother's, Elena said quietly. Margaret shrugged, fitting. Something old for an old mistake. The morning of the wedding, Elena stood in her attic room, looking at herself in the small mirror. She thought about her parents, about how much they would have loved David, not for his money, for his heart. She touched the small silver necklace she always wore. It had been her mother's, a simple cross. She whispered, I hope you're proud of me. The ceremony was at 2 p.m. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, 75 degrees. The kind of day that seemed designed for new beginnings. The Whitmores sat in their folding chairs, smirking and whispering. Vanessa wore sunglasses and kept giggling into her phone. Christopher had brought a flask and was already tipsy. Madison looked bored. Grandmother Whitmore sat in her wheelchair at the front, her face unreadable. Aunt Margaret and Uncle Richard sat together, looking like they were about to watch a comedy show. David stood at the makeshift altar. He wore a simple black suit, the same one Elena had seen him wear to the building's holiday party the year before. It probably cost $200. What the Whitmores didn't know was that David's actual wardrobe was in a penthouse in Manhattan, custom suits from Italy, shoes handmade in England, watches that cost more than most people's cars. But today, he was playing the part, the janitor, for now. Elena walked down the aisle alone, no one to give her away. The grass was soft under her shoes. She kept her eyes on David. He was smiling, not a nervous smile, a real smile, a smile that said, "I see you, and this is real." The justice of the peace, a bored-looking woman in her 50s, opened her folder. "We are gathered here today to join Elena Marie Whitmore and David Alexander Torres in matrimony." Christopher snorted. Vanessa whispered something to Madison. They both laughed. The justice of the peace continued. "Marriage is a commitment between two people who choose to build a life together. It requires love, trust, and partnership." Elena almost laughed at the irony. Her family thought this was a punishment. They had no idea. "Do you, Elena Marie Whitmore, take David Alexander Torres to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," Elena said. Her voice was steady. "Do you, David Alexander Torres, take Elena Marie Whitmore to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," David said. His voice was warm. "Then by the power vested in me by the state of Connecticut, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." David stepped forward and kissed Elena. It wasn't a quick peck. It was deep and real and full of promise. The Whitmores groaned audibly. "Oh, God," Vanessa muttered. "Get a room." The justice of the peace closed her folder. "Congratulations." That was it. No applause, no celebration. Aunt Margaret stood immediately. "Well, that's done. Let's move to the reception." The reception was set up on the back patio. Folding tables, Costco sandwich platters, cheap champagne and plastic flutes. The kind of setup you'd see at a low-budget office party. Elena and David sat at the head table. The Whitmores sat at another table, already drinking. Uncle Richard stood up first, swaying slightly. He raised his plastic champagne flute. "I'd like to make a toast. To the happy couple." He paused for effect. "Elena, sweetheart, I hope you've thought this through. Marriage is tough, especially when reality sets in, and you realize romance doesn't pay rent." Laughter from the family, Richard continued. "And David, buddy, I don't know how you pulled this off, but congratulations on marrying up, way up. Enjoy it while it lasts." More laughter. Christopher stood next, already drunk. To David, the janitor who somehow convinced a Whitmore to marry him. "Dude, I genuinely don't know if you're a genius or insane. Probably both. Either way, good luck when the money runs out and she realizes what a downgrade she made." The family holed. Vanessa stood, grinning. "I'd like to toast to love, specifically to love that's so pure and innocent that it ignores little things like financial stability and social class." "Elena, babe, I hope love pays for groceries because that's about all you'll have." The laughter was loud now. Elena felt David's hand squeeze hers under the table. "Steady," he whispered. "Not yet." Then Aunt Margaret stood. The room quieted. She was the matriarch, the one with the power. "I have a gift for the newlyweds," Margaret announced. She handed Elena an envelope. "As promised, $10,000. Use it wisely because that's the last penny you'll ever receive from this family. Elena, you've made your choice. You married the help. You are no longer a Whitmore in any way that matters. You're on your own now." The family clapped mockingly. Elena opened the envelope. There was a check. $10,000. Made out to Elena Torres. She looked at David. He nodded slightly. Elena stood. The laughter died down. "Thank you, Aunt Margaret," Elena said calmly. "For everything." "Truly?" Margaret looked confused. Elena turned to face the entire family. "I want you all to know something. You're right. This marriage is going to change my life completely." "Yeah," Christopher laughed. "You'll be poor." Elena smiled. "No, I'll be free. Free from people who measured my worth by my usefulness. Free from a family who saw my parents' love as weakness. Free from needing anything from any of you ever again." The laughter stopped. Grandmother Whitmore's voice was sharp. Elena, watch your tone. Why? Elena's voice was clear. What will you do? Cut me off? You already did. Mock me? You've done that for 15 years. Take away my inheritance? I never had one. You have no power over me anymore. The family sat in stunned silence. Elena continued. Because I have something you'll never understand. I have someone who chose me, who sees me, who loves me for exactly who I am. She took David's hand. And honestly, that's worth more than every penny in this estate. David stood beside her. Ready to go? He whispered. So ready. They walked toward the exit. Where do you think you're going? Margaret demanded. We're not done here. Actually, we are, Elena said. She turned back one last time. Goodbye, Aunt Margaret. Goodbye, everyone. I wish you exactly what you deserve. They walked down the long driveway of the Whitmore estate, hand in hand. At the bottom of the driveway, a car was waiting. Not David's beat-up Honda Civic that he used for his janitor persona. A black Bentley Flying Spur. The driver, a man in a crisp suit, opened the door. Welcome back, Mr. Torres. It's good to see you. Thanks, Marcus, David said. This is my wife, Elena. Congratulations, ma'am, Marcus said warmly. Where to? The Hartford apartment, David said. I want to show Elena something first. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to the most expensive residential building in downtown Hartford, the Azure, 42 floors of luxury condominiums, penthouses that started at $8 million. Elena looked at David. You live here? David smiled. We live here. They rode the elevator to the 42nd floor. The top floor. David unlocked the door to the penthouse. Elena stepped inside and stopped breathing. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. Modern furniture that belonged in architectural magazines. A kitchen with marble countertops and appliances Elena couldn't even name. Art on the walls. Real art. She recognized a piece that looked like a Rothko. This is yours? Elena whispered. Ours, David corrected. Your name is already on the deed. I had the paperwork done last week. He led her through the apartment. 3 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a library with built-in shelves floor to ceiling, a terrace that wrapped around the entire penthouse. Elena walked through it slowly, touching things like they might disappear. The master bedroom had a closet the size of her old attic room. It was filled with clothes, dresses, shoes, casual wear, everything in her size. I may have done some research, David admitted. Your shoe size is 7.5. You prefer dresses with pockets. You hate anything too tight around the neck. Am I close? Elena started crying. This is too much. It's perfect, but it's too much and I don't know how to process this. David pulled her close. You don't have to process it all at once. We have time. Elena buried her face in his chest. They really have no idea, do they? Not a clue, David said. And I'd like to keep it that way for a bit longer. How long? As long as you want. Elena pulled back, wiping her eyes. What happens now? Now, David said, we live our lives. I need to go back to my company. I've been gone 18 months. My board has been patient, but there are decisions only I can make, which means press conferences and media attention and the world finding out where I've been. How much media attention? Elena asked nervously. A lot, David admitted. When I disappeared, it was international news. Forbes called it the mystery of the decade. A billionaire CEO just vanishing. There were conspiracy theories. Some people thought I was dead. Others thought I'd joined a cult. No one guessed I was mopping floors in Connecticut. Elena laughed despite herself. When do you have to tell them? Soon? I'm planning a press conference for Monday, 3 days from now. Elena took a breath. Then we do it together. I'm your wife. I'm not hiding. David looked at her seriously. Are you sure? Once we do this, your life changes. Privacy becomes complicated. People will have opinions. The media will dig into everything. I'm sure, Elena said. Besides, I want to see my family's faces when they find out. David grinned. You have a cruel streak. I love it. I learned from experts, Elena said. They spent the weekend in the penthouse. David showed Elena how everything worked, the smart home system, the climate control, the security. On Sunday night, Elena couldn't sleep. She stood on the terrace, looking out at the city lights. David found her there at 2 a.m. Can't sleep? I keep thinking about tomorrow, Elena admitted. What if I mess this up? What if I say the wrong thing, or look wrong, or... Elena, David interrupted gently. You're not going to mess anything up. Just be yourself. That's all I need. But I don't know how to be the wife of a billionaire, Elena said. I know how to be the girl who works 3 jobs and lives in an attic. I don't know how to be this. David took her hands. Then don't be the wife of a billionaire. Just be Elena, the woman I fell in love with. The woman who left sandwiches for a janitor. The woman who's kind even when the world hasn't been kind back. That's who I need standing next to me tomorrow. Monday morning came. Elena put on a navy dress that David had bought for her. Simple but sophisticated. David wore a charcoal gray suit that was custom tailored. He looked like a completely different person. This was David, the CEO. Confident, powerful, polished. They drove to the Torres Global Solutions headquarters in downtown Hartford. The building was glass and steel, 30 floors, the company logo at the top. Inside, employees stopped and stared as David walked through. The press conference was held in the largest conference room, 50 journalists, cameras everywhere, lights that were almost blinding. David squeezed Elena's hand once, then walked to the podium. She stood slightly behind him. Good morning, David began. His voice was clear and authoritative. Thank you all for coming. I know my absence over the past 18 months has raised many questions. Today, I'm here to answer them. The room was silent except for camera shutters clicking. 18 months ago, I made the decision to step away from my role as CEO of Torres Global Solutions. I did this not because of any scandal or crisis, but because I needed to remember something fundamental. I needed to remember what it means to be human in a world that often reduces people to their economic value. He paused. I spent the last 18 months working as a night shift janitor in various locations across the country. I lived modestly. I worked with my hands. I had conversations with people who had no idea who I was. And I learned more in those 18 months than I had in the previous 5 years. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A journalist raised her hand. David nodded. Mr. Torres, why a janitor specifically? Because it's work that people don't see, David said. We walk past janitors every day and don't acknowledge them. I wanted to understand what that invisibility felt like. I wanted to be reminded that every person, regardless of their job title, has value. Another journalist spoke up. Did you find what you were looking for? I did, David said, glancing at Elena. I found authenticity. I found people who treated me with kindness, even though they thought I had nothing to offer them. And I found my wife. The room erupted. Cameras turned toward Elena. She felt her face flush, but held her ground. David continued. I'd like to introduce you to Elena Torres. We were married 3 days ago. She loved me when she thought I was a janitor making minimum wage. She chose me when choosing me meant walking away from her family's wealth and support. That's how I know this is real. A journalist shouted a question. Mrs. Torres, did you know about your husband's identity when you married him? Elena stepped forward slightly. Her voice shook at first, but grew stronger. No. I found out the night my family arranged our marriage. They thought marrying me to a janitor was a punishment. They wanted to humiliate me. What they didn't know was that they were giving me the greatest gift of my life. Not because of money, but because David saw me as a person when my own family never did. The room went wild with questions. By the time the press conference ended, the story was already going viral. Tech billionaire returns after secret life as janitor. David Torres marries woman who loved him when he had nothing. The mystery of the invisible billionaire solved. Back at the Whitmore estate, Vanessa was the first to see it. She was scrolling through her phone over late breakfast when she saw the headline on her news app. She clicked it, saw the photo, David in a sharp suit, Elena in that navy dress, both standing in front of Torres Global Solutions headquarters. Oh my God, Vanessa whispered, then louder. Oh my God! What? Christopher looked up from his plate. Vanessa thrust her phone at him. Christopher's face went white. He read the headline out loud, his voice getting higher with each word. Tech mogul, David Torres, introduces wife Elena, says she loved me when I had nothing. He looked up. That's our Elena. That's the janitor we laughed at 3 days ago. Aunt Margaret grabbed the phone. Her face cycled through confusion, disbelief, then horror. This has to be a mistake. She scrolled frantically. Found another article. This one from Forbes. The return of David Torres, net worth $22 billion. There was a detailed breakdown of his company, his properties, his investments. Uncle Richard leaned over to read. His hands started shaking. "We married her off to punish her," he said slowly, "and we gave her a billionaire." Grandmother Whitmore started laughing, that awful wheezing laugh. "We thought we were humiliating her." The old woman shook her head. "We literally handed her everything." Madison was pulling up article after article on her phone. "There's an interview. David Torres says, and I'm reading directly, I spent 18 months disguised as a janitor to find authentic human connection. I found it with my wife, Elena. She loved me when she thought I was worth nothing. That's how I knew she was worth everything." The room went silent except for Grandmother Whitmore's laughter. Christopher spoke first. "We need to fix this. We need to call Elena. And what?" Vanessa snapped. "Apologize? Pretend we didn't spend 3 days laughing at her wedding? Pretend we didn't mock her for marrying poor?" Margaret's phone started ringing. She looked at the caller ID. Helen Pembroke, the most influential socialite in their circle. She answered. "Helen, Margaret, darling." Helen's voice was bright and sharp. "I had no idea your niece married David Torres. The David Torres. You must be absolutely thrilled. Actually, Helen, Elena, and I haven't spoken since the wedding. We had a small disagreement." "Oh no," Helen's voice dropped. "Margaret, you need to fix that immediately. Everyone who's anyone is desperate to meet her. She's the story right now." The call ended. Margaret looked at her family. "We need to fix this. Now." "How?" Christopher demanded. "We told her she was no longer a Whitmore. We gave her $10,000 like it was charity." We laughed in her face. "We have to try," Margaret said flatly. "Because right now, Elena has access to more wealth and influence than this entire family combined, and we just made her our enemy." Meanwhile, across town, Elena and David were back at the penthouse. Elena's phone had been ringing nonstop. She'd turned it off after the 15th call. "They're panicking," Elena said. She was curled up on the couch, still in her dress from the press conference. "Good," David said. He was loosening his tie. "Let them panic." Elena looked at her phone. She'd missed 23 calls, 17 from Aunt Margaret, 4 from Uncle Richard, 2 from Vanessa. Texts were pouring in. Vanessa's read, "Elena, call me please. We need to talk about the wedding. There was a misunderstanding." Christopher's said, "Hey, we should grab coffee. I'd love to hear about David's company." Aunt Margaret's was more direct. "Elena, we need to discuss family matters. Please call me as soon as possible. This is urgent." Elena showed them to David. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Elena thought about it. For 15 years she'd wanted their approval, their love, their acknowledgement that she mattered. Now she had the power to give them what they wanted. Access, connection, influence, or she could walk away. "I want to move forward," Elena said finally. "Not with them, just forward. You don't want revenge?" David seemed surprised. "Wouldn't it feel good to show up at their next event covered in diamonds? Make them feel small the way they made you feel small?" Elena smiled. "It would feel good for about 5 minutes. Then I'd be just like them, measuring worth by money, keeping score. The truth is, they already gave me the greatest gift. They married me to you. They set me free. And they did it thinking they were being cruel. That's better than any revenge I could plan." David kissed her forehead. "You're a better person than most." Elena rested her head on his shoulder. The next morning, Elena woke up early. She made coffee in the kitchen that still felt surreal. She was standing on the terrace when David found her. "You're up early," he said. "I couldn't sleep," Elena admitted. "I keep thinking about what comes next." "What do you want to come next?" "I want to build something," Elena said. "I've been thinking about all those years, living in that attic, working 3 jobs, feeling worthless. And I keep thinking about other kids in foster care or family situations like mine. Kids who are told they don't matter. What if we started a foundation? A foundation? For kids aging out of foster care. For young people in family situations where they're unwanted. Housing, education support, job training, therapy, everything I never had. A place where they're told they matter." David pulled out his phone. "What would you call it?" Elena thought about her parents, the James and Sophia Foundation. After my parents. David made a call. It was 8 in the morning, but apparently billionaires don't wait. Jennifer, I need you to set up a meeting with our legal team. We're starting a foundation, the James and Sophia Foundation. Focus on foster care and supporting young adults transitioning out of difficult family situations. I want a full proposal by end of week. He hung up. Done. Elena stared at him. You just started a foundation. Potentially, David grinned. How much do you want to allocate to start? Is $1 billion too much? Elena asked hesitantly. For kids who need advocates, David said. That's not too much. That's perfect. Over the next few months, the James and Sophia Foundation became real. They purchased a building in downtown Hartford, renovated it into transitional housing with support services, hired social workers, developed programs. Elena was involved in every decision. She met with former foster youth. She researched best practices. She worked 16-hour days because, for the first time in her life, she was building something that mattered. 6 months after the wedding, the foundation officially opened. The ceremony was covered by local and national media. Elena gave a speech about her parents, about being unwanted, about the importance of seeing people. At the end of her speech, she said something that made headlines. I was told my entire childhood that I should be grateful for charity. But charity without dignity isn't kindness, it's control. Real support means seeing someone's humanity, believing in their potential. That's what this foundation is about. The audience stood and applauded. That night, Elena and David had dinner on the penthouse terrace. The city lights sparkled below them. I've been thinking, David said. About what? About us. About this life we're building. Elena smiled. And I'm grateful, David said. Your family tried to punish you by forcing you to marry a janitor. Instead, they gave me the most extraordinary woman I've ever met. They gave us this story, this foundation, this purpose. Elena took his hand. Do you know what the best part is? What? They'll never understand it. They'll never understand that the real gift wasn't the money. It was being set free from needing their approval. That's freedom, David agreed. Real freedom. 1 year after the wedding, Elena received a handwritten letter. It was delivered by courier to the penthouse. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive stationery. Inside was a single page in Grandmother Whitmore's shaky handwriting. Elena read it standing in the kitchen. The letter said, Elena, I am 93 years old. I have lived long enough to accumulate many regrets. You are my greatest one. I told myself I was preparing you for a harsh world. The truth is, I was harsh because I didn't know how to be soft. When your father chose love over duty, I called him weak. I was wrong. He was the bravest of all of us. And you are his daughter in every way that matters. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I see you now. I see what we lost when we failed to love you. Your parents would be so proud. With regret, Grandmother Whitmore. Elena's hands shook as she finished reading. She set the letter down. David waited. What do you want to do? He asked. Elena thought about it. Grandmother Whitmore was 93. Dying, probably. This was likely her attempt at making peace before the end. Elena could ignore it, or she could offer something the Whitmores had never offered her. Grace. She picked up her phone, dialed. Margaret answered on the first ring. Elena? Yes, Elena said. I got Grandmother's letter. Elena, we're so sorry, Margaret began. I'm not calling to reconnect, Elena interrupted, but I am willing to offer something. What? I'll visit Grandmother once, Elena said. Just once. She can say what she needs to say. After that, we're done. You can tell people I'm your niece if it helps you socially. But we're not family, not in any real sense. We're just people who share some history. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Margaret said quietly. Thank you. I'm not doing it for you, Elena said. I'm doing it because holding on to anger takes energy I'd rather spend elsewhere. 2 days later, Elena drove to the Whitmore estate. She hadn't been back since the wedding. A nurse let her in. Grandmother Whitmore was in her bedroom, too weak to come downstairs. Elena sat in the chair next to the bed. The old woman's eyes were still sharp. Elena, Grandmother Whitmore said. You came. I came, Elena said. Thank you for the letter. Did you mean it? Every word, the old woman said. I'm dying. Lung cancer. Maybe 2 months. I don't want to die with this between us. Elena nodded. I forgive you. Grandmother Whitmore's eyes filled with tears. Just like that? Just like that, Elena said. Because holding on to anger won't change the past. It'll only poison my future, and I have too much good in my future to let your mistakes ruin it. The old woman reached out a shaky hand. Elena took it. I'm sorry, Grandmother Whitmore whispered. For all of it. I know, Elena said. I'm sorry too. For what? That you never learned how to love without conditions. That must have been lonely. Grandmother Whitmore wept. Elena sat with her for an hour. When Elena left, she felt lighter. She drove back to the penthouse where David was waiting. How do you feel? He asked. Free, Elena said. Finally, completely free. 2 months later, Grandmother Whitmore died. Elena attended the funeral. She stood in the back. She didn't cry. The Whitmores tried to talk to her afterward, but she politely excused herself. 18 months after the wedding, the James and Sophia Foundation had expanded to 5 cities. They had helped over 800 young people transition out of foster care with housing, education support, and job training. Elena had become a recognized voice on foster care reform. She spoke at conferences, she testified before the state legislature, but her favorite part was still the individual kids she met, the success stories. One afternoon, a young woman approached Elena at the Hartford location. She was about 20. Her name was Maria. Mrs. Torres, I wanted to thank you. 3 years ago, I aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. Your foundation gave me housing, helped me finish my GED, supported me through community college. I'm starting at the University of Connecticut in the fall, studying social work. I want to do what you do. Elena hugged her. You're going to change so many lives. Thank you for seeing me, Maria whispered. Elena watched her walk away and felt it. Purpose. This was why the Whitmores' cruelty had mattered, because it had led her here. 2 years after the wedding, Elena and David renewed their vows, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to celebrate. They held the ceremony at the original foundation building, the same building where they'd met, the same lobby where they'd fallen in love. They stood under that glass ceiling and spoke vows they'd written themselves. David went first. Elena, 2 years ago, I was pretending to be a janitor because I'd forgotten how to be real. You saw through the disguise, not to the money underneath, but to the person. You loved me when loving me cost you everything. I promised to keep seeing you, every day, to love you not despite your scars, but because they're a part of your story. Elena wiped her eyes before speaking. David, 2 years ago, I was told that marrying you would be my punishment. They were right about one thing. My life did change completely. But not the way they intended. You didn't save me from my circumstances. You gave me tools and space to save myself. I promise to keep choosing you every single day, and I promise that we'll keep building a life that matters, not because of how much we have, but because of what we do with it. They kissed as their small gathering of friends and foundation staff cheered. That night, they sat in that same lobby. The building was quiet. They could see stars through the glass ceiling. David pointed out Cassiopeia, the queen who was punished for her pride. Elena smiled. I've been thinking about that, about punishment and redemption. And I think my family tried to punish me, Elena said. They wanted me to suffer, but punishment only works if the person receiving it believes they deserve it. I never believed I deserved their cruelty. So it didn't break me, it freed me. David pulled her closer. You took what was meant to destroy you and used it as building material. It's just survival, Elena said. It's extraordinary, David insisted. They sat in silence, looking at stars. Everything had changed since that first night 2 years ago, and nothing had changed. They were still two people who saw each other, who chose each other. That's what the Whitmores never understood. They measured everything in money and status. They couldn't comprehend that the real currency was being seen, being known, being loved not for what you have, but for who you are. 3 years after the wedding, Christopher called. He'd been out of rehab for 8 months, sober, working at an addiction recovery center. Elena agreed to meet him at a coffee shop. Christopher looked different, thinner, clearer. Elena, he said, thank you for meeting me. You asked 3 times, Elena said. I figured you were serious. I need to apologize to you for everything, for how we treated you growing up, for the wedding, for every cruel joke. I was complicit in all of it, and I'm so deeply sorry. Why now? In rehab, they make you take inventory. Your name kept coming up. My therapist asked me what you did to deserve how we treated you. And I realized the answer was nothing. You did absolutely nothing. I appreciate the apology, Elena said carefully. But I need you to understand something. Your apology doesn't erase what happened. I know, Christopher said. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just trying to take accountability. Elena studied him. He seemed genuine. I forgive you, she said finally. Christopher's eyes filled with tears. You do? I do. Because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I'm not interested in being part of the Whitmore family. That chapter is closed. I understand, Christopher said. Can I ask you something, though? What? How did you survive us and still become this kind? Elena thought about it. I had a choice, she said. I could let your cruelty make me cruel, or I could decide that I'd be the person I needed when I was 7 and lost everything. I chose the latter. Every day I choose it. They talked for another hour. As they were leaving, Christopher said one more thing. For what it's worth, Elena, you won. You won? Yes. The family tried to break you, and you became unbreakable. That's the best revenge. It's not revenge, Elena said gently. It's just living well. 5 years after the wedding. Elena received an award from the National Foster Care Coalition, the Lifetime Achievement Award. She was 30 years old. The ceremony was in Washington. David came with her. Elena stood at the podium looking at the room full of social workers, policymakers, and foster youth. When I was 7 years old, I lost my parents, Elena began. The family that took me in made sure I understood that I was a burden. For 15 years, I believed them. Then my family tried to punish me by forcing me to marry a man they thought was poor, a janitor. They thought it would humiliate me. Instead, it set me free. Not because the man I married turned out to be wealthy. That's not the point. The point is that someone believed I was worth something when I'd been told I was worth nothing. That belief saved me. And that's what the James and Sophia Foundation is built on. The belief that every young person is worth something, worth investing in, worth seeing. We're not saving anyone. We're saying you matter. Your life matters. We believe in you, and we're going to show up. Elena paused. My family tried to punish me with marriage to a janitor. They failed. Not because I was strong, but because I refused to believe that cruelty was all I deserved. And I want every person who's been told they're not enough to hear this. You are not what happened to you. You are not your trauma. You are a person with inherent worth, and you deserve people who see that. That's what this work is about. Creating a world where every young person has at least one person who chooses them. The room erupted in applause. That night, Elena and David had dinner together. Elena looked out at the city lights and thought about everything. About the girl in the attic who was told she was worthless. About the forced marriage meant to humiliate her. About the janitor who turned out to be a billionaire. But mostly she thought about the choice. The choice to take what breaks you and build something beautiful. The choice to love when you've been taught to hate. The choice to see value in yourself when others see none. That choice, made every single day for 5 years, had created a life worth living. The Whitmores had tried to make her marriage a punishment. They'd tried to trap her in poverty and regret. Instead, they'd given her David. They'd given her a reason to start the foundation. They'd freed her from the obligation to keep trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. They thought they were punishing her. They were liberating her. And 5 years later, Elena could finally see the whole story. Not just the pain, but the purpose. Not just the breaking, but the building that came after. The cruelest punishment had become the greatest gift. Not because of fate or karma, but because Elena chose to transform it. She chose to take the worst thing that ever happened to her and make it the foundation for something unbreakable. And that choice made all the difference. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support helps the channel grow and allows me to bring you more powerful stories every week. See you in the next one.